Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Combat series. In this episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently. This time we're not going to look at skills that actually do damage. We're going to look at skills that actually heal some damage up. And we're not going to heal ourselves up because we can't take damage yet. But our trustworthy skeleton George can take damage. So how about we give him a healing skill and a little bit of logic so he can actually use it. Let's get started. Do you want to learn how to design and make games? Or maybe you want to learn how Godot works? Then subscribe to this channel and don't forget to hit that little bell icon to make sure you don't miss out on anything. Also, if you got any questions about this tutorial or Godot or game development in general, leave a comment down in the box below, or you can find me on my Twitch stream. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday, and I stream my own game development in Godot. You can find anything from the description, the link and the schedule down in the description box below. I'll see you there. To kick it off, let's get working on that healing skill. Actually, I've already made the healing scene itself because this scene is even easier than the other skill scenes. So I've got a single target heal skill, which I've saved under its name single target heal. I've got a node 2D, nothing complex. It's not a rigid body. It's not an area 2D. All what we need to do is when we cast this skill is that an animation plays around the player. So all we need is a node 2D for a location, but this could even be a position 2D. It could even be the sprite itself with an animation player attached to it. But as I like to have a container node, which is not a specific node like a sprite, I prefer to have a node 2D on top of it. So I've also set up the animation. So that's going to be, I'll put it on loop for a moment. That's simply going to be some green particles that's going to fly around the character. So let's put that back. And let's get working on the rest of the code. And if you're wondering, like, look, Stefan, you don't really sound that great. That's actually correct. I'm not the best. I'm not 100% at the moment. I got a little bit of a cold, but don't worry, I'll be fine. So now that we have our skill scene for our single target heal, let's have a look at the rest of the game code, what changes we have to make, and let's take a look at that skill database, of course, to make sure that we see the right parameters so that you can follow along. First off, in the script of the player, I've extended the match command to also handle the single target heal skill type that is of the healing skill. And there's a big difference compared to all the other skills. All the other skills, we're adding the skill scene to the map, to the parent of the player, which would be the map scene. For the single target heal, we're adding it to the player itself, or the entity that casts the skill, that entity, that node, that will receive the scene as a child. The reason why we do that, if you cast a skill, a projectile, or a nova, an explosion, a smoke cloud, a shockwave, those are things on the map. They don't move with the player. Things that move with the player will be things like auras, or in this case, the healing particles that have to be emitted from the player, because it's not a location on the map that's healed, it's the player that's healed, so that animation should follow the player. And we can make that animation follow the player very easily by making it a child of the player instead of making it a child of the map scene. So that's why we add it to the player. It's an important difference and an easy way to make sure that animation sticks with the player wherever the player goes. Then on our graphical user interface, I've added a skill on the skill bar. That's not really going to be functional in this tutorial because, of course, our player doesn't have a health bar yet. It doesn't even have health statistics yet, as we have not really seen a need for that yet. As Godot, as George, our skeleton, is not able to attack our player yet, but we will be adding that in the future, so it's good to have it in there already. Then, in our skill database, I have added, as normal, the green fields. So I've added a healing skill of the type single target heal. All of these parameters are non-applicable, and in the last column we have a new parameter called skill heal, very similar to skill damage, and I've added a value of 500. That is quite high. I think George will be able to heal its entire HP bar up with that, but we are going to give it a countdown, of course, or a cooldown, so George will not be able to survive, but we will be able to see George's health bar move up nicely. With that done, we can start working on actually coding the heal skill, so let's get started on that. Now, to get started on that code, I'm going to be adding a script here. I'm back in the healing skill, the single target heal scene, and I'm adding a script to the first node. And the script is very easy. It's very similar to the skills we have made before. So let's quickly go over this, as this is pretty much a cut case thing for you by now. We have the skill name that is pushed by the actor, and we have the heal amount that's very similar to the damage amount. So the heal amount is collected from our skill database. So that's collected from our singleton data import. As per normal, we set the correct texture of the skill in case we would have several healing skills with different animations and different textures. This would make sure that it all stays variable and it works for all those skills together. Then we start the healing function, and the heal function is nothing more than the start of the animation player. That we get the parent. So remember, this node is added on top of the map. So when we get the parent, or sorry, it's not created on the map, it's created on the player, or of course George, our trustworthy skeleton. So whatever is the parent of this scene is the entity that costed the skill. So we get the parent, that basically means we get that node which costs this skill, and we start its on heal function, very similar to the on damage function. Of course we don't have that yet, so we'll be creating that, and we push the heal amount to that function. Then we yield the code for 0.6 seconds, and 0.6 seconds comes from the animation player. Right here on the bottom you can see that the animation is 0.6 seconds long, so we want to keep this node within the scene tree for 0.6 seconds so that the animation can finish, and when the animation is finished we remove it from the game scene, thereby freeing up the resources for our processor. So with that done, we can start working on actually implementing that on heal function for both the player, so we don't get an error when we use it. We're not going to fill it up for the player actually, but as soon as we've made sure we don't run into errors on the player scene, we're going to go straight to George, and we're going to give George a little bit of a logic and the capability to use this skill scene. So first, our player. Very quick, very easy. We go to the player script, and all the way on the bottom, or anywhere you like really, but I like to add these things on the bottom. I'm just going to add one function which is on heal, and the heal amount just as it got pushed by the heal scene, and we're just going to pass. We're just not going to do anything. We just say, okay, it exists, it can receive the signal, so we don't run into an error. We're just going to pass it immediately as our healer, or our player doesn't have a health bar yet. It doesn't have a health amount yet. So yeah, there's not really any need to work on that now, as we can't damage it either. George and William are not smart enough for that yet. So we're going to add the actual healing capability to George this episode, and we'll work on the player health bar in a graphical user interface in a later episode, at which point we can add some logic to this function as well. But it will be there for the future. So now let's work on George and William. William is a twin brother of George, so they both come out of George's script. So when we go to George's script and we add this same function, same variable name, function on heal, heal amount, just like with the player, but this time we add the logic to it. So just like with on hit, where we do minus the damage, current HP minus damage, here we do take the current HP plus the damage. And just like with the damage on hit function, we have to verify whether the HP becomes 0 or lower, in which case we have to play the ondef function. In the case of healing, we have to verify whether the current HP starts to exceed the maximum HP. If you remember from, I think it was episode 1 or 2, I advised you to keep this max HP value at all times available in the script, and to actually work with another value, current HP, to determine what the current HP is. You don't want to have one stat for HP, because you would never be able to verify anymore what the maximum HP of George was. So currently we have set the healing amount to be quite high, 500 hit points. If, for example, say George would have 300 hit points and heals up, he would have 800 hit points. He would have twice his maximum HP. In which case, if it just happens and happens and happens and he keeps on healing, he can heal himself into 1,000,000 HP. You could create an Uber George. So we want to avoid that. So we verify, after every heal we verify whether the current HP has exceeded the maximum HP, and if that is the case, we set the current HP to be equal to the max HP. So we bring it back to that 400 maximum value. At which point we run the same HP update function as we do on the damage on the on hit function when the entity takes damage, to update that health bar to be going back up or going back down. This entire HP bar update function is completely compatible with both HP going down or going back up, so we don't have to make any changes to that. So far, George is now able to heal itself, or to heal. Well, it's not able to heal himself yet. It's able to receive a heal, but he doesn't have any logic yet to actually heal himself up. So let's work on that now, and then we can run some test games. So let's get started on that logic. Now, I want to emphasize before we start with it that this is a healing skill tutorial. So the logic that I'll be making for George and William is going to be very basic, and it's not going to be a tutorial on actual creating artificial intelligence or logic for your enemies within your games. I'm making it very easy in this tutorial, focusing fully on the healing skill and not only making the logic for demonstration purposes. In the future of this tutorial series, we will be adding that logic, that more elaborate logic, to our enemies, because it's a very important part of combat in video games. So if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe. So to start, I'm going to create a new variable on the top that says can fire. And then I'll be adding a function in the process function. So this is going to be constantly working all the time. And we get an error. Can heal, can fire. No, that's different. Can heal. So the actual logic of this entire piece of code is very similar to what we do in the player script. In the player script, back in episode number, I think it was 1, we have said that if the action or the fire button is pressed and can fire is true, we set can fire to false, so we don't get many projectiles at once. And then at the end of the function, we set can fire back to true. Well, that happens here exactly the same. If the percentage HP is below 50 and can heal is true, we set can heal to false, and at the button we set it back to true. Then these 4 lines, loading the skill scene, creating a skill instance or a variable with an instance, then pushing the name to that instance, and then adding that instance as a child to the parent is exactly the same as what we made under the match command here of the player script. These are just basically one-on-one copies. The only difference is that the variable is called differently in each script. In one is called selected skill, in the other it's just called skill name. Sorry, I'm just pushing the heal hard-coded in there. Like I said, the logic is going to be simple. It's not going to be elaborate yet. Then we yield the code for 1 second, very similar to yielding the code here for the rate of fire. Here I'm just hard-coding 1 second in here without actually using a skill cooldown variable anywhere within the code. Like I said, the logic is easy. The focus is the heal skill. Then we set can heal back to true. So this allows George and William to actually heal if we set the value of can heal to true. So that actually verifies that yes, that is true right there. So if we play this, we're going to see some issues. We are actually going to see some issues right here already. A nil and integer. Yeah, we have to set the percentage as well at the beginning of the script to make sure that that actually works. So like I said, we're going to see some issues. They're going to be healing. Here we have a ice spear, and as you can see, as soon as George hits below 50%, heals himself up. That looks pretty decent. Now let's take a fireball. A fireball does more than 200 damage, so George is going to heal instantly. And as you can see, we don't even have the time to see how much damage we did, because George is reacting so fast, even though he is a undead skeleton, that basically the player doesn't get any feedback of how much damage did my skill actually do. And that's not great for the player experience. So we've got to create some sort of a delay in there. Also, if I'm going to continue firing these projectiles, you will see that when George, his death animation starts, he's still going to heal himself. He won't stand back up, as that's not a game mechanic. But George will still have a heal animation go around him, even though he has already died. So let's see how that looks. As you can see, he's still healing, even though he's already in his death animation. Of course, that's not very properly coded either. So that's like this script that we have made is like the basics, the bare minimum to get this healing skill to work. Now we got to add some fine-tuning to it, and this fine-tuning is very much healing skill logic that I want to include in this tutorial, so that I don't consider this to be logic on the enemy character. This is more logic for making a healing skill work properly. So let's first address the issue is that George is healing so fast that the player doesn't get any feedback in terms of how much damage that I do. There's two ways to solve this, and I think there's only one correct way. The first way to solve this, which might be necessary in some very specific healing skills, is to add a delay to the skill itself. As you remember with the area of effect skill we've created in episode number 5, we added a delay for when the players, or the enemies I should say, get damaged based on when the animation of the area of effect skill, the explosion, hit maximum peak intensity. I think that I believe it was 0.3 seconds delay until the damage was actually applied to the enemies. We could include something like that in this skill, but the downside is this skill is not only used by the enemies, by George, it's also going to be used by the player. And very often you want the heal, the actual adding hit points to the player, you want to happen that instantly. Unless you have something like a charged heal, which might take some time and then adds more health, like a boosted healing skill. In that case, of course, you want to build that functionality in. The second way to fix this issue is to actually add a delay for that healing skill only on our enemies. And that actually makes a little bit of sense, because as a player you have a reaction time with your mouse when you're playing the game. You're not instantly healing on a single frame, on a 60 frames per second single frame. You're not healing yourself either. So how about we give the enemies some actual delay time, as if they're human, dare I say. Very easy. Straight after can heal, we're going to yield the code for 0.25 seconds. If you remember in the creating the health bar tutorial, I believe tutorial number 4, we set the tween that takes the value from one to another value to 0.1 seconds. So George is going to be damaged below 50%. The tween is going to take 0.1 seconds to get to that value. Then that value will be visible in the health bar of the enemy for 0.15 seconds. 0.1 seconds plus 0.15 seconds makes the 0.25 seconds pause that we have included right here. Then George is going to heal back up, and that should show that George well, it looks like George has a reaction time. George gets a little bit slower. You know, George is an old skeleton, he gets slow. So this should fix that issue. Now let's fix the animation on death and healing animation on death now, and then we can test the game again and see if everything works. So now for that healing animation that's still played when George dies, we create also a new variable on the top, and that's death, and we set it to false because we want to know if George is dead or not. And of course at the start of the game George is not dead, even though he's a skeleton. I don't know, funny jokes aside. And then of course we want to know when it's actually dying. So as soon as the death animation or the death function starts, we can say that that is true. Now we need to put that into our healing logic. So we could say that if percentage HP below 50 and can heal is true and death is false, then play it. But the problem is it could still hit that that if function as let's go, let's do this, then wait for the 0.25 seconds. If we kill George in that time frame of 0.25 seconds, if the next projectile is flying in, it would still be doing the healing skill after this timer has run out, but it could also be playing the death function at the same time. So we actually want to verify his death right underneath the timer. So if after the timer it turns out that George is dead, we want to pass the function. We just don't want to run anything. Else we want, of course, this entire code to run. So now the healing skills knows that even when the heal got triggered, that even if George died while it was in its response time, if it died in the meantime, it's still not going to be actually doing the heal. So let's run that game, see if we fix those two issues that we wanted to fix, or not really issues, but the optimizations. So now we do the ice spear. That already feels better. When we do the fireball, you can see that the tween gets all the way down to the health, and after that George actually starts healing up. You could even increase that further. You could even create like a randomizer, which is going to take a random value or a random float between 0.5 and 5 seconds, and create like an effect that George is not that sharp every time, because now it feels like George is like a computer doing exactly what he needs to be doing at the same time. So of course you want to add some randomness to this, but like I said, that's enemy logic we're going to be implementing in the future. So, and now actually when we kill him, he's not playing any healing animations anymore, as George, finally being a skeleton, can be at peace. Rest in peace, George. Okay guys, that was it for today. That was our healing skill. Now you know how to make a healing skill. Now you know how to add it to at least an enemy. And you have learned a little bit about enemy logic, but like I said, we're going to elaborate on that so much more into the future. Might even become an entire series by itself. Not sure on that yet. If you like this video, then please smash that like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to check out that Twitch link down in the description box below to see me do my own game development every Tuesday and Thursday. Also, I hope to see you guys next time. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do, because for now I'm going to go straight into bed and I'm going to sleep out this cold. I hope on the next episode I won't sound like this anymore. So yeah, let's hope for the best and keep on gaming, keep on coding. See you next time.